In one Slovak children's rhyme, a snail is threatened with arson. In another Slovak song, a cockerel faces the death penalty for breaking a flower. And in a famous English poem, a small boy is slowly eaten alive by a lion. They really don't make children's stories like they used to. And if you stay with me right till the end, I have a suitably macabre Slovak dad joke for you. There was a boy whose name was Jim. Slimák, Slimák, vystrč rožky. His friends were very good to him. Dám ti masla na parwožky. He hadn't gone a yard when bang! Ak ich nie vystrčíš von, podpálím ti dom. With open jaws, a lion sprang and hungrily began to eat the boy, beginning at his feet. A ty schoríš v ňom. Some of you may remember in October last year I did a rendition of the children's rhyme Slimák, Slimák, which you heard in the intro, while dressed as a zombie as part of my Halloween special podcast. So Slimák, Slimák, vystrč rožky, dám ti masla na parwožky. So far so good, so far so innocent. And then it takes a bit of a dark turn. As you can see, it looks like it was filmed on a potato, but in spite of this, the clip went a bit viral on Instagram, but not so much on YouTube. For anyone still unfamiliar, it goes in English something like this. Snail, snail, point your antennae, and I'll put some butter on your little horns. If you don't stick them out, I'll burn your house down, and you will burn in it. What's shocking isn't just the threat, it's the velocity. Within 3 lines, we've gone from butter to arson and death. There were a lot of comments along the lines of, I remember this from my childhood, but I didn't realise at the time how horrific it was. Other comments offered alternate endings. Instead of burning the snail, for example, they would smash it into the church and make an apostle of it, apparently. And still others gave other language versions of the same thing. The Hungarian version saves the snail from the fire and then feeds it milk and butter, while the Polish version feeds it cabbage and has pierogi instead of little horns. One of the Czech versions rewards the snail with coins to buy curd cheese and tobacco. Another is more sinister. Śniečku, śniečku, vystrč rúžky, dokud držím v ruce nůžky. Snail, snail, stick out your horns while I'm holding a pair of scissors. But the award for most brutal of all probably goes to Serbia, which promises to reward the snail by putting an axe through its head. It's fascinating how the same innocent snail can be fed milk in one country and executed with farm equipment in another. So is this just harmless nonsense, or were rhymes like this doing something deeper? Teaching obedience, rehearsing danger, or smuggling adult themes into playground language? In the case of the Slovak, Czech and Serbian versions of the poor snail, part of the horror for me is the sheer senselessness of the violence. There doesn't seem to be any moral to the story, other than life can go terribly wrong at a frankly alarming rate, or perhaps, don't be a snail. But some of the people in the comments suggested an equally dark song, but this one perhaps does have a moral. At first glance, Kohútik jarabý appears to be a similar descent from nice, familiar animals to shockingly abrupt deaths. Kohútik jarabý necho do záhrady polameš zláliu, potom ťa zabijú, a keď ťa zabijú, tak ťa pochovajú do takej záhrady, kde pani sedajú.
That was good.
Speckled Rooster, don't go to the garden. You'll break a lily, and then they'll kill you. And if they kill you, then they'll bury you, in the kind of garden where gentlemen sit. This time there is at least a hint of a moral, as I said. Don't break the flowers, maybe? Or don't go into other people's gardens? But the punishment seems extreme for such a minor crime. It has been suggested, though, that this one is symbolic, and it's definitely easier to believe that with this one than with Slimák, Slimák. One interpretation reads the rooster as male sexuality, the garden as a woman, and the lily as virginity. Suddenly, the threat of death and burial doesn't look quite so absurd. And that's the difference. With the snail, the violence feels arbitrary. With the rooster, It could be punishment. Of course, we should be cautious. Not every cockerel is a phallic symbol, but it does make some sense of it, and warnings are everywhere in traditional tales, from Dobzhinsky to the Brothers Grimm. But sometimes the punishment goes beyond warning. It lingers, it narrates, it itemizes body parts. In 1907, English author Hilaire Belloc published cautionary tales for children, including the magnificent and horrifying story of Jim, who ran away from his nurse and was eaten by a lion. There was a boy whose name was Jim. His friends were very good to him. They gave him tea and cakes and jam, and slices of delicious ham, and chocolate with pink inside, and little tricycles to ride, and read him stories through and through, and even took him to the zoo. But there it was the dreadful fate befell him which I now relate. You know, at least you ought to know, for I have often told you so, that children never are allowed to leave their nurses in a crowd. Now this was Jim's especial foible. He ran away when he was able, and on this inauspicious day he slipped his hand and ran away. He hadn't gone a yard when bang! With open jaws a lion sprang and hungrily began to eat the boy, beginning at his feet. Now just imagine how it feels when first your toes and then your heels, and then by gradual degrees your shins and ankles, calves and knees are slowly eaten bit by bit. I'll spare you the second half, but suffice to say that things do not improve for poor Jim. My brother bought an illustrated version of this book for my daughter when she was really quite small. I used to read it to her as a bedtime story, and she eventually memorized most of the words and could recite it herself, with a little prompting. Then, when she was maybe 6 years old, there came a fateful day when she realized the full meaning of what she was saying. Wait, so Jim is really dead? And that was the end of Jim. She never recited it again, even as a teenager when I implored her to do it for English language poetry competitions. But I haven't lost hope. To be fair, Belloc wrote Jim as a satire of older Victorian cautionary tales. It was exaggerated and intended for adults as much as for children, and it did have a clear moral lesson. If you run away from your parents or nanny, something terrible will happen. And this is where Slimák still stands apart for me. It's the perfectly performed, pithy pivot from sweet to macabre without any moral justification whatsoever. As one commenter said, Slovaks are built different. Okay, if you've made it this far, you definitely deserve the dad joke I promised at the beginning. This is a Slovak pun, a rather rare beast, and it comes from Miko Huzo on YouTube. In the interests of not killing the humour, I'll do it in Slovak and put an explanation up on screen for the non-Slovak speakers after I say goodbye. Here we go. Bol drak, ktorý zjedol každého v dedine. Zjedol všetko, ale nechal po sebe iba hlavy. Bol na bezlepkovej diete. Okay, I'm James, and this has been the Blorecast. Thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.